used right. And speaking of the Ravens, now we talk about former Ravens quarterback, former Super Bowl 47 MVP, Joe Flacco, will be the starter for the Colts. Former first-round pick Anthony Richardson has been benched. And for Flacco, he gets another opportunity at redemption. Last year, he took over as the QB for the Browns. He helped lead the Browns to a playoff push. And now, this year, he gets another opportunity to take over as a backup. So we'll see if Joe Flacco still has some of that magic from last year left out in the tank, and he can bring that over to this season with the Colts. But at the same time, we got to talk about Anthony Richardson because, well, if it's cool for Flacco, he gets another opportunity to redeem himself or to continue his redemption story. For Anthony Richardson, it's another indication that he could be the true biggest bust from the 2023 draft. You could argue that, and hear me out. Obviously, from an on-the-field play standpoint, Bryce Young, he's the worst of those QBs on the field play alone. However, Anthony Richardson, you could make a case for being a bigger bust because he did have a higher ceiling. A lot of fans, a lot of analysts were skeptical of Bryce Young being the number one quarterback. They leaned more toward either Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud. I remember I did a poll question on my channel last season in late August, early September, going into the season, asking you guys, who do you think will be the best quarterback out of the first round draft picks? Richardson, Stroud, or Young? And a majority voted for Anthony Richardson. They thought he was going to be the best out of the three QBs taken in that 2023 draft class. And now it's not looking too hot. Anthony Richardson, he's had a few decent games here and there, but he struggled with injuries. And the latest problem is he's struggling with stamina. He left the game because he felt tired and fatigued for a little bit, which is showing that he didn't prepare his body. He doesn't have the stamina on top of dealing with multiple injuries. This is a big red flag. To me, I don't see how Anthony Richardson can come back from this. I mean, clearly his body's just not in shape for the NFL level so far. We haven't seen it in him. He's dealt with numerous injuries last season. He missed a lot of time. He got injured again this season. He missed a few games. And now he's having stamina problems, having to exit games. These are clear red flags of a guy who's not suited and doesn't have the durability to be a top quarterback in the National Football League. So I think in some regard you could say Anthony Richardson's a bigger bust than Young because he had a higher ceiling. Young's played worse, but Richardson had the higher ceiling. So I'm actually going to turn this into a poll question on my community page, asking you guys, do you think that Richardson's a bigger bust because he had a higher ceiling than Young, or do you still consider Bryce Young the bigger bust? I'm going to ask that as a question because that is a potential question you could ask. You could, depending on your point of view. But at the end of the day, though, Anthony Richardson, to me, this is like the final nail in the coffin. I was already seeing signs that he may be a bust. Going into the season, I was thinking, okay, if he stays healthy, maybe I'll have a solid go. He'll be able to show what he can do. In week one, in that first Colts-Texans game, he had a solid outing in defeat. And I thought, okay, maybe Anthony Richardson does have something if he can just stay healthy. But then week two, the Colts crashed down a little bit, and then you lost him for a few games that early stretch of the season. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, yeah, that was to me kind of like I guess you could say 3 strikes you're out. I'm like, okay, he had 2 injuries last year. He's struggling, and he got injured early this year, and now he's getting benched due to stamina concerns. To me, I don't see how Anthony Richardson's going to come back and live up to his potential from this. There's clearly several red flags that indicate he's not suited to be an NFL starting quarterback. And it's a shame for the Colts because I don't blame them for drafting the guy. I don't blame them. They saw his potential upside, and they knew they needed a quarterback. They knew the one-year quarterbacks, Rivers, Wentz, Matt Ryan wasn't going to work anymore. They knew they needed to actually get a long-term quarterback. Unfortunately, they got the wrong long-term quarterback. So it's bad luck for the Colts now. If Joe Flacco takes over Is there a chance that he could help salvage this season? Possibly, but what's good is that going to do for them in the long term? Because Flacco only had that 1-year deal with the Browns, and then he was gone. Browns had to go back to Watson. You saw how that's worked out for them. So even if Flacco does have another magical run with the Colts, what's that going to do for them long term? So this is still a bad situation for the Colts, and this is rotten luck hitting them for drafting Anthony Richardson. I mean, I don't fault the Colts for drafting the guy, but it's rotten luck coming back to him. Kind of do feel bad for their fans that they're stuck in this position. But it is what it is. I mean, Anthony Richardson, just got to say it, the man's a bust right now. I wanted to see him redeem himself this year, but it's just not going to happen.